All right, folks, we'll just wait a couple of seconds to get started until some additional people arrive. We're expecting a pretty big crowd today, so just sit tight for maybe 1 minute. It's mostly going to be me speaking today, so if you could please keep your mics muted, and you're more than welcome to share your video if you would like, but it is certainly not necessary, so you can turn off your camera if that makes you more comfortable. No problem at all. All right. It's a pretty good crowd so far, and Carrie Tanasachuk is with me, who's a co-worker, as a co-host, so she'll let some people in as they arrive. So just to be respectful of everyone's time, we'll get started right away. And as you probably noted, that this is being recorded. So welcome everyone to today's info session on some updates around the Community Foundation's new grant cycles, which are called the Community Impact Grants. We're really excited about it. It's been a work in progress for a number of years. And so, yeah, we're excited to share these changes. Before we begin, we do like to always take a moment and take a breath and acknowledge the land and the dynamic history that this place that we call home has. I have very big privilege of looking out the window and seeing the river flow into the bay from my office here. And the Woolastook River, also known as the St. John River, as it flows by, it brings a lot of history and a lot of stories with it. For over 12,000 years, or over 12,000 years ago, the first people arrived on this land that we all now call home. The Woolastook First Nations, this is the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory, but they're also part of the larger Wabanaki Confederacy, which includes the Mi'kmaq and the Passamaquoddy people. It really wasn't until about 400 years ago that European settlers began to arrive here and really dramatically alter the land and establish cities such as St. John the way that we know it. While all of us on this call are likely working in ways to try to eliminate inequities, we do think it's important for us all to just take a moment before we jump into this type of work and reflect on the ways that we might actually be perpetuating some of those very inequities that we seek to alleviate. Myself and the Community Foundation are certainly not exempt from that either. So we'll just give everybody just a quick minute just to pause and think about your history here and the ways that you may be working towards ending those inequities. Thanks, folks. And for anybody that just came in, you're more than welcome to keep your camera on or off. That's totally up to you. Mostly going to be me speaking for the next half hour. So please keep your mics muted. If you have questions, you can throw them into the chat or write them down and follow up with me after. And we might have a little space at the end to answer any questions. I'll kind of start with the same thing that I'll finish with. If you have any questions that come from this session, please just reach out, contact me or someone at the Community Foundation directly. On this call today, we have people who have been applying for grants from us for a number of years, and we also have some new faces and some new organizations, which is great to see. This is meant to be a high-level overview of some of the changes and how they're going to show up in our community impact grants, which open on March 1st. You will all inevitably have questions more specific to your own projects and organizations, so please just reach out anytime with questions to follow up. So for those that don't know me, my name is Harry Daley, and I'm the Director of Community Investment and Learning here at the Community Foundation. I get the fun job at the Community Foundation of getting the money out the door into the hands of community organizations. And what we are going to talk about today are some changes to our grant cycles as we move into 2023. For those on the call that aren't familiar with the Community Foundation or existing grants, we will give you some context for that, and we'll also give context to those who are familiar with us too. So a quick overview of where we are, what we will cover today. So the first is just some context for change. So why are we changing at all? What is influencing these changes? We're going to take some time to look back at our past granting cycles and how we are changing them. We will show you we'll kind of reveal our new approach that we're taking and how that will show up in our community impact grants. We'll briefly touch on reporting and what that might look like moving forward. And then if there's time, we'll have some space for questions. So I think just some context for this change, the most important being our mission at the Community Foundation. So our mission is to serve as a trustee of gifts, support charitable organizations, and inspire community leadership. And I think it's really important just to recognize that as our mission, we're here to support you as community organizations. You are our constituents. We're here to try to support you and help your organizations thrive. Your missions are your missions. We do not claim ownership over those. We serve a wide variety of causes. We're not all in on one or the other. We will support the arts, seniors, poverty reduction, recreation, everything in between. We are here to support your work. And so these changes hopefully reflect some insights from you and make this, more accessible for you. So 4 kind of big categories of context for change. And the first one's community insights. So over the past 2 years, we've been gathering formally and informally information from all of you, community organizations. That's been shared through our application process, through some surveys that were sent out. We did send out a big survey that was well responded to a little over a year ago. And for those of you that filled that out, know that we have been working with that information since then, and hopefully you'll see some of the changes and things that you shared show up in this today. And you are all really the catalyst for these changes. We would not be making these changes if you had not requested these. And so hopefully we're working in a way that encourages you to reach out and share any challenges that you're having or ways that we can better work to serve you. Another important context for change is the evolution of our review committee. So the volunteers and the board members that review the applications are a really important piece of this process. And about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we updated the terms of reference for that group. And basically what that means is we now have a larger, more diverse group of individuals that are more reflective of the community. And they've been engaged in a variety of strategic conversations over the past year, drawing mainly on information that you provided through surveys and that I was able to share with them through, from our conversations that we've had. Another more boring context, but a really important one, are changes at the CRA, so the Canadian Revenue Agency this year. And one of the big changes is the increase of our disbursement quota, which we call the DQ, and you don't really need to know what that means. But basically that just determines how much we have to grant out each year. And so it was previously 3.5% of our assets, and it has been up to 5%. And without having to go down the rabbit hole of what all those words and numbers mean, basically we have more money to give to the community now. So that works out in your favor. As the person responsible for getting that money out the door, I definitely like to see more going out. That's always great all around. So there is more money that we have to distribute moving forward. And another big change was the ability to fund non-qualified donees. And basically what that means is that in the past, we were only able to fund and accept applications from qualified donees, which are registered charities, municipalities, things of that sort. But they've opened that up a little bit. So now we can fund non-qualified donees, which is basically everyone else. We're moving slowly into that, but I will say that moving forward, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, that we are now able to accept applications and fund incorporated not-for-profits. So you do not have to have charitable status, but you do need to be an incorporated non-for-profit to submit applications and receive funding from us. And another important piece is around this trust-based philanthropy. And so that likely is not something that you're familiar with if you're not in the world of funders, but trust-based philanthropy is basically a new approach that's really hoping to shift the power dynamic between funders and grantees. Inevitably, there is a power dynamic that exists between us that have money and you that need that money. And we really are trying to shift that power so that we trust you to ask for what you need, to use the money in a way that works best for you, and to let you do your work. We're here to support that work. We're not here to tell you how best to do that. We can certainly advise if you have questions, but we don't want to meddle in your work. Your mission is your mission. You know your community's best, you know your work best, and we are here to support that however you deem necessary. And so a lot of the changes that you'll see reflect a movement towards this trust-based approach. And so kind of looking back now at what we heard, so a lot of people might be familiar with the Smart and Caring and the anniversary grant cycles. Those were our main grant cycles in the past. We will no longer be using those buckets, so we'll talk about it here now, but if you're not familiar with them, don't spend too much time remembering Smart and Caring and anniversary grant, because we are moving beyond those. I will say too, just a point of reference or note, is that today we're talking about what we consider internal granting. So this is money from our local endowment. We often are intermediaries for funds such as the Community Services Recovery Fund that's open right now, or the Social Innovation Fund, things like that. We don't have too much say or to dictate the terms of how we administer those. We're paid to administer those on behalf of somebody else. What we're talking about today is these internal grant cycles, so Smart and Caring and anniversary grants. So we've been asking you, what you think of those, how we can improve them. Largely people have said, good job, keep it up, which is not surprising. We're a funder, nobody wants to tread too heavily and give somebody, don't bite the hand that feeds you, but hopefully we've set this up in a way and anonymously that we have heard some really good insights from you. One of the big insights has been that the eligibility criteria is too restrictive. Smart and Caring and anniversary grant both only funded new pilot projects. They needed to be 1 year in duration. You couldn't come back for the same project again and again if you needed it. If something worked, then you were kind of left to figure out how to continue to fund that elsewhere. And we were also only able to fund registered charities. So there was an assortment, there was a big list of about 15 different things that were ineligible to apply for. So we definitely hear that loud and clear. Another thing that we heard is that the maximum request was too low to effectively action ideas. So the Smart and Caring, which was our big grant cycle, the anniversary grant, was a bit more, but only one person received that, which had all sorts of its own issues in and of itself, very cumbersome application process, and a bit patronizing to have people pitch and not receive money. But mostly our big one is the Smart and Caring, and the maximum request for that was $25,000. And $25,000, while maybe at some point in time was enough to move ideas forward and to pay people to tackle these really complex challenges that a lot of you are working to solve, $25,000 is not enough to do that. So a lot of you working in poverty reduction, we're giving you $25,000 to pay somebody to live in poverty, to try to get other people out of poverty. So it's really hypocritical to have that as the funding cap. So we definitely hear that loud and clear. Another point is that there's not enough points of access. We heard that again and again. Smart and Caring being the main one. We would open that in the winter, and if that closed, say mid-March, if you were to reach out with a really pressing community need that you needed to respond to in April, we would basically tell you to put a pin in that and sit on it until like a year from now. And obviously that's not how community needs arise, and it's certainly not how you should be trying to deal with them as an organization. We heard that there should be quicker turnaround on approvals. This is something that we have been working on, and I think getting much better at, but it was not that long ago that it would take, for a lot of really legitimate reasons having to do with the amount of staff that the Community Foundation had. But it could sometimes take 4 to 6 months before you would hear whether or not your grant was approved or not. Another simple thing, but people said this again and again, word count too low to communicate ideas. So people working in really complex areas saying that the word count was just way too low to communicate the ideas that they needed to put forward in their application. The reviewers like a lower word count, but that doesn't mean that you're able to express your idea clearly in 500 words or less. And then another thing which we touched on already, but that the review committee should be more reflective of the community. And I think that we have made strides to work in that direction. So happy to say that we have made changes that hopefully address all of these things in some way. So changes for 2023. So what are we doing about this? So this is some kind of broad buckets of change that we are now, they've been approved by the board. It's been a long process, but it's been thorough, and our committee has been involved every step of the way, and our board has been very supportive of this as well, and it passed it all, approved it at the end of the last fiscal 2022. So this is all happening now and will come to life in our first grant cycle that opens on March 1st. But one of the big things is the broader eligibility. So now, in a nutshell, you can apply for what you need. There's no need to only apply for pilot projects. It does not have to be new and innovative, though they are still welcomed and encouraged. You can apply basically for anything that you need, and this even includes operational expenses like rent, existing salaries, existing programs. So we've reduced the ineligibility criteria from 15 to 4 different things, which we're just really not legally allowed to fund. So we can't fund endowments at the community foundation. We can't do retroactive expenses and things of that nature. But anything outside of that, we are now able to receive applications for, and you could potentially receive funding for. It's been a long time getting there, but that's really exciting in and of itself. And I already mentioned this, but incorporated not-for-profits are also eligible for funding. So now we can have qualified donees, registered charities, incorporated not-for-profits, and we still accept funding intermediaries. So if you are not an incorporated not-for-profit or a registered charity, you can still partner with one of the two to receive funding in different ways. So we're happy to work with you on that. Another thing is an increased funding cap. So now with our community impact grants, you can request up to $50,000. So we've doubled the cap on that, which we're really excited about and happy about. Obviously, $50,000 is still, putting a cap on the amount that you can receive. And some people who are working towards paying people what they deserve to fund and solve really complex problems, $50,000 is still a cap. But what we had to try to do was balance, we do have a finite amount of money that we can give. And at a certain point, we fund a broad diversity of projects in scope and size. Some people that are requesting, $2,000, some people that will be requesting up to $50,000. And in the past, we've been able to fund between 30 and 50 projects a year. If we go too much higher than 50,000, let's say 100,000, we might limit that to like 6 to 10 projects a year. So we kind of had to strike a balance somewhere. And we thought that for now, $50,000 seemed like a good cap to put on it that would not, would not impact too much the amount of projects that we're able to fund. More opportunities to access funds. So the community impact grant cycle, which we'll talk about in a second, which will replace Smart and Caring and Anniversary. It will be open 2 times a year, every year. So it will be open in the spring. March 1st is when the first intake opens, and then again in the fall, so that you will have multiple points of access to funds. It'll be kind of broken up between the two, and hopefully that gives you more access to those funds, but it also hopefully on the back end alleviates the load a little bit for reviewers. We fully anticipate that this year we'll get a lot in the spring because that's when it's traditionally open, and that's totally okay. Don't stress about that. But ideally, we'll be working to a spot where that's spread out a little bit better for reviewers, so that that they have the time and the space to review, sometimes up to 70 applications at a time. It's hard for them to really dive into those and give them the time that your work in writing them deserves. So hopefully we can spread that out as time goes on. And then we also have a really revised or a streamlined review process. So we have revised applications and review criteria that are matched with the different types of things that you might be asking for. And I'll touch on that a bit in a minute. But we've streamlined that. So hopefully, depending on the nature and the scope of your ask, there is an application that can be paired with it along with review criteria that you will be provided with. So you can kind of see the answer key. But hopefully that can enhance the turnaround time as well. So we're looking at kind of a 6-week window instead of up to 6 months. Another thing is that all of our processes are going to be managed through our online portal. In the past, we would receive applications that way, but we're now moving towards payments as well as reporting to all go through the online portal. So all of that will work together to make it a much more efficient process, hopefully for you and the reviewers. So all of these changes culminate in what we are calling the community impact grants. So these are 2 intakes annually. The first one opens on March 1st of this year, so in 2 weeks, which is a little scary for me because there's a little bit of work to be done to get that all up and ready to roll in 2 weeks. But that will be open from March 1st until April 10th. And then the second intake will be from September 15th to October 25th. Depending on how this rolls out, but if that goes smoothly, our hope is to just lock that in stone at least for a few years, so you know exactly when you can anticipate to make applications. Requests for community impact grants will be between $10,000 and $50,000. So you can request anywhere within that. There's no benefit to requesting more or less. But we will, help you and coach you through that application process to make sure that you're requesting an amount that reflects what you need. If you're on the call and you're saying, I don't need $10,000, I need $5,000 or I need $300, that is totally okay. And we'll touch on that. We have new avenues for you to access that funding. It's not the theme of this particular info session, but rest assured that if you need less than $10,000, we are still here for you. We can still support your initiative. But for the purpose of today, we're going to focus on the community impact grants because that's where most of the money will get out the door. And so a new change to this process, so there's 2 intakes for the community impact grants, and then depending on the nature of your need, what you need in your organization and what application you'd like to put forward, we've designed 2 application streams. So one we're calling emerging ideas, and that will look very similar to the existing Smart and Caring. So that's for ideas that are new, one-time purchases, twists on existing programs or service delivery. So the questions and the review criteria will look very familiar to you if you've applied for Smart and Caring or the anniversary in the past, because it will be more or less the same. But what we've also done is added a second application stream called Sustaining Impact. And what that does is it allows programs and organizations that have existing services that they deliver to have an application tailored to them. So if you have an existing program that needs money for whatever reason, for salary, rent, operations, evaluation, administration, whatever it is that you need, fundraising, a lot of things, it's kind of the bucket for all of the things that we couldn't fund in the past. So the Sustaining Impact application will be for you, and there will be a review criteria for that you will also be provided with. Just to kind of get ahead of a question, we do not have 2 separate pots of money for those streams. There is no benefit to applying to one or the other. We will be looking at them on a case-by-case basis. A little, without getting into the weeds too much, those review criteria will both be weighted equally. And so they'll be reviewed individually, and then they'll be weighted against each other in a very equitable way so that there's no benefit. We don't want to, prioritize one or the other. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the logistics of that. And we think, at least in theory, we have a way forward that can help people compare the 2, sometimes very different types of applications without putting either at a disadvantage. So a couple additional pieces of info that might be familiar to some folks, but hopefully answer some questions you might have. So regardless of which stream of application or what you're thinking, all applicants must always reach out to the Community Foundation before submitting an application. That is not to gatekeep you or to try to muscle you away from applying. That is just to ensure that everybody on this call, anybody that reaches out, regardless of if you're an established organization or it's your first time working with us, that you have access to all of the support that you need to put forward an application that you feel good about and that has the best chances of success. And so always you can reach out, you need to reach out to the Community Foundation before submitting an application, partly because the application is password protected, so you won't actually be able to submit it until you talk to somebody and get the password. Usually that'll be directed to me, but if you have any connection at the Community Foundation of Greater St. John, feel free to reach out to them and they will direct you accordingly. Something that we are committed to is informing you about the status of your application within 6 weeks of the deadline. So within that 6 weeks, the reviewers will need to review all of those applications individually, meet as a group, make their recommendations to the board of directors who then approve them. So it's quick, but we want to try our best to commit to turning that around from the day that the application closes The time you find out would be within 6 weeks. And for those of you who have applied before, another thing that we commit to is calling you and letting you know. So I can give you a day when that, like during the application process, and say on this day, I will call you whether you are successful or not. If you're not successful, hopefully provide you with some valuable feedback so that we can get you in the queue for the next open application and make sure that you do get some funding. Another additional piece of information is that you're permitted to submit multiple applications. This has always been the case. If you have different projects within your organization, you can apply multiple times in one intake. You could apply to different streams. You can apply multiple times throughout the year. Probably there's no negative to doing that. Sometimes it might be one or the other, but that's something that we can discuss during our initial intake call. But you are permitted to submit multiple applications. One thing that people mentioned in our consultations was that they would love multi-year funding. And we agree that would be great to be able to provide multi-year funding. But again, it comes back to the finite amount of money that we do have to give and just how that might impact the amount of projects that we can fund. And so we didn't want to put new programs at a disadvantage to existing programs. We had a lot of conversations around that. So currently we do not offer kind of traditional multi-year funding, but we can offer some flexibility around the duration of your projects. So in the event your project is not going to, begin and finish perfectly within a year, maybe it's going to take longer than that. We can have a conversation about that and ensure that your application reflects that, the reporting structure reflects that as well. So there is flexibility around the duration of the projects, even though we can't commit to saying we'll give you X amount of dollars every year for the next 2 or 3 years. We can be flexible around the duration of your project and make sure that you receive an amount that reflects that. Then I mentioned this already, but funding requests under $10,000. Contact us directly to explore your options. We are here for you regardless of the size. We regularly get people reach out, that need $300 for their program to provide driver's training or get a driver's license, whatever the case may be, sponsorships, things of that nature. We are still able to meet those needs on a case-by-case basis. So you can reach out to us directly if you have funding requests under $10,000. And then last but not least, reporting. So let's say you are successful in receiving a grant from us, a community impact grant. We have a template that we will provide you for reporting. So this is really focused on reflection and learning. The reporting template is not meant to be, did you do exactly what you said you were going to do the way that you said you would do and give me all of your receipts. That is not the trust-based approach that we are trying to embody. We hope to encourage you to reflect on the work that's been done and learn so that you can better serve the community that you serve in a way that works for you. So that is the focus of that. And hopefully you can share challenges so that we can adapt our practices to meet your needs. So we do have a template to provide for reporting, but you also have the ability now to submit a report in a format that works best for you. So we have guiding questions, but if you've already created documentation around your program or project that you feel exemplifies some of those guiding questions that we have in the template, we do not need you to waste your time rewriting things in a way that works for us. We will gladly accept information about your project in a report in a format that works best for you. So it doesn't even have to be a report. If you have video, website, blog, whatever the case may be, we are very open to different ways of receiving information about your project once it's wrapped up from you. And last but not least, we really encourage folks to participate in something that we're going to be trialing, which is in-person reporting and storytelling spaces. So these are opportunities for you to not only share your work, but potentially connect with other funded partners, people from our board and community investment committee, to talk about the work that you're doing, to build up relationships and network. We hope to create spaces that you can connect and deepen the work that you're doing and connect with others as a form of reporting as well. That will be optional, but as that says, we would encourage you to participate if it makes sense for you. And so that is kind of the synopsis, 11:30 on the dot, of the application process moving forward of the Community Impact Grant. So as mentioned, March 1st is when you will be able to access the application. Feel free to reach out to me. That is my contact information on the screen in advance of that if you would like. We won't have everything ready to go until March 1st. It'll be very similar to probably how you submit applications, like right up to the last second, and then we'll have it live on March 1st. We will have an applicant guide, which is a very thorough explanation of hopefully everything that you need to know, and will answer many of your questions. That's something new that we hope to provide, a lot of insight into the process, the questions, the review criteria, and so on and so forth. That will all be available to you. So that is summary of the changes. It's 11:30. We've kind of said it would take about a half hour. If anybody needs to hop off, feel free to hop off now. If you have any questions, I will stop sharing my screen now, and feel free to, there's quite a few people on the call, so maybe use the raise hand icon or just put it in the chat box. All right, we have some questions. Let me see. Geography constraint. Yeah. So Susan Kingston, could funds be used at a provincial level beyond the St. John region? Case by case. We are the Greater St. John Community Foundation, and many of our funds are dictated, the way that we earn the money that we can give are dictated by saying that it needs to benefit the Greater St. John region. With that said, so long as there are beneficiaries within the St. John region, we do have the ability to work with you to look to make sure that you're covering the scope that you need. So it doesn't necessarily have to be totally limited to St. John if you have a provincial scope, so long as there are beneficiaries in the St. John region that you can communicate, then that is okay. Catherine Vegas Craft, can someone apply to funding in both streams? Yes, you can. You can apply to both streams in multiple applications, no problem. So partial funding, that's a great question. We try our best to fund your full amount. That's always our intention, and that's part of that trust, and that we trust that you will ask for what you need. And so part of the work that you'll spend with me developing your application is around having a budget and a project that reflects what you need. We don't really like saying like shoot for the moon and hope for a little bit. We want to make sure that you're asking for what you need and not exaggerating that. But if you ask for $50,000, usually what we'll do is get you to try to scale your application and put it in phases. So, phase 1 would cost X amount of dollars, phase 2 would cost this amount, or break it down really clearly in the budget, so that if we do run into a situation where we have to do partial funding, which doesn't happen often, but does happen, that we're making those decisions based on your need and not just a random number. So if you need $35,000 to do phase 1 of your project and you've requested 50, that we don't just say like, we have 17 left over, like maybe they could use that. So if that is the case, we'd reach out to you before we gave you that $17,000 and expected you to deliver on a project that you said cost 50. So partial funding, yes, if necessary, and we'll work with you on the application to make sure that it is set up in a way that is can accept partial funding in a sustainable way. Good. Lots of good. Thank you. Appreciate the comments. That's nice. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, team. It's been this community investment committee. It's been all of your insight, all of the work that you've done. Sharing that, we wouldn't know what to do unless you told us. So please always reach out. We love positive feedback as much as anybody else, but it's really that productive feedback that helps us grow as an organization and helps us enact our mission better. So how soon can we reach out to you to pitch our project? Should we wait until after March 1st? You do not have to wait until then. You can reach out anytime that you would like I said. So this is Jessica Raven asking if you can reach out sooner. Feel free to reach out sooner. I will not be able to provide you with the same information that I would that I can on March 1st. Sorry, because I don't have all of it ready yet. We're teasing out a few details and getting it all edited. It's almost there, but it'll be ready on March 1st. So you're more than welcome to start thinking about your idea. There's no benefit to getting it in early. It's kind of nice just for my workload if everybody doesn't reach out like 3 days before the deadline, but I know that that's just how the world works sometimes and how people manage expectations. So that is okay. If you do not feel bad if it's 24 hours before deadline and you're like, I forgot about that. We're here to help you and usually block off big sections of time in the week before an application closes. One thing that we will do, so this has been recorded, we will also follow up with the slide deck. So we'll send that out to everybody that registered. So you'll have that in your inbox by the end of the day. And, just like I said at the beginning, just reach out if you have questions specific to your program, project, how to interpret these new changes. Reach out. I'm happy to work through it with you. We're learning as we go too. This is a pilot for us in a lot of ways. So we'll try our best to adapt this to what you need. And by eliminating those eligibility criteria, we really do hope that you can ask for what you need. We'll see what gets funded. That's all, that's up to the committee at the end, but hopefully it's set up in a way that it can really diversify the types of things that you ask for. So I'm not seeing any other questions, so maybe I'll give everybody a nice farewell and thanks for coming. It's great to see everybody and thanks for the great work that you all do. Looking forward to hopefully hearing from some of you about the projects that you're working on and how we might be able to help move that forward.
Thanks, Harry.
No problem. Bye, folks.